The views and opinions expressed on this public access programming do not necessarily represent those of the Hawaii Media family of radio stations. It's time for Sunday morning public access programming on this Hawaii Media radio station. Good Sunday morning to you. It's time for Sunday morning public access programming on our 6 Oahu radio stations here. 101.1 FM, 101.5 FM, 103.9 FM, 107.5 FM, and 96.7 FM, along with 97.1 FM. I'm Johnny Merrill, and joining us once again would be the President and CEO of Grassroot Institute of Hawaii, Grassroot Institute of Hawaii, Keli'i Akina. Good morning to you. Happy Sunday to you, Keli'i.
Aloha to you, Johnny, and to all your listeners. Great to be with you, as always.
Well, we just had a State of the State address by the new governor, Governor Josh Green. A lot of reaction. The governor announced new initiatives to decrease homelessness, fund housing, and also provide some tax relief. What's your overall reaction while you were listening to the governor's speech?
Well, Johnny, I'd have to say overall, there was a lot to like. We may not agree with everything, but sure, there were a lot of great proposals that are outstanding, and so we give kudos to the governor.
Okay, let's talk about some of the specifics of the governor's proposal, specifics about that. Perhaps the biggest one was his Green Affordability Plan, basically a tax relief plan, correct?
Right. You know, that plan would do a lot of things. It'll promote tax credits for food, rent, and childcare. His aim is to increase the standard personal income tax reduction and index the state income to inflation. And, there's a lot to unpack here, but we're glad the governor is taking that issue seriously. Our cost of living, I'm sure you agree, Johnny, is going through the roof. It's a real problem, and I'm glad he's focusing on that. And that's actually led to a lot of people leaving Hawaii, and that's a real problem that has to be addressed. I like the governor's plan to index the tax brackets to inflation and increase the standard deduction and the personal exemption, which is like a pre-tax standard deduction. What this would provide is relief across the board and make sure that people aren't pushed simply because of high inflation or aren't punished because of high inflation, which is punishing them enough already. I also like the teacher tax credit, which would give the state teachers $500 back if they spend their own money on school supplies. And that would apply to teachers in both public and private schools. And meanwhile, the food, rent, and child care tax credits would give relief primarily to low and middle class families. The problem with tax credits, however, is that sometimes people don't remember to file for them, or they file incorrectly, so they don't get the relief they need. So the state merely keeps that money. It would be a lot simpler to just cut the income tax rate for food, since the lower rate wouldn't run into that issue. So as you can see, there are a lot of things that we do like about what the governor presented, but there are some challenges that I'll talk about a little bit later on in the interview.
There's a lot there to unpack. Now, is there anything you don't like about the tax relief plan?
For one thing, it increases Hawaii's earned income tax credit, and that's tied to the federal EITC program and gives relief to low-income individuals. Now, on the surface, that may sound good, but at the federal level, investigators have found high levels of fraud, or at least what they call improper payments. According to a report by the U.S. Treasury Department in 2021, 28% of EITC payments were improper. And what that means is that 28% of the money in the program was given to people who shouldn't have gotten it, or people who received more money than they should have. Now, not all of these improper payments are outright fraud, but it does raise some concerns. A much simpler reform than increasing the EITC would be to just cut the income tax rates on lower income individuals and families. That would provide relief and make sure that relief got back to the people who actually deserve it.
Now, is there anything that you think that Governor Green should have included in his tax relief plan?
Yes, an exemption from the state general excise tax for medical services, and a pledge not to increase taxes in general. I would have liked to have seen that.
Speaking with Keli'i Akina, President and CEO of the Grassroot Institute of Hawaii, Grassroot Institute of Hawaii. While he was speaking, Governor Green, he signed an emergency order relating to providing shelter for homeless individuals. The order was, waived a number of state and county laws. What's your take on that decision?
Let me say this. I was glad to see the governor targeting red tape. But the problem is this. Emergency orders aren't the way to do it. This problem that created our housing crisis and as well, the overall problem of homelessness took decades to come about, and it shows a system that's not working. It's not an emergency that will, with a quick fix, be able to solve the problem. Instead, what we need to focus on is working in the legislature to change the laws. That particular emergency order also waived some laws that are in the public interest. If you've read the order as I have, you'll see there's just a long list of laws that are all of a sudden suspended for the sake of solving the homelessness problem. For example, it waived the public records law, which means it's going to be very hard for the media and watchdog groups to get information about the projects involved. It also waived the state procurement laws, which ensures that the state contracts are handled in the highest ethical fashion and in a competitive and fair manner. So those are some concerns that are raised with the Emergency Act.
Okay. Governor Green didn't stop at homelessness. He said, pushing more housing would be his number one priority and is proposing more than $1 billion in funding for the Hawaii Public Housing Authority. Are you on board with that?
Well, I need to see the details first. But in general, it sounds like throwing more money at a problem that has long been impervious to more government spending programs. The real key is home ownership. Public housing doesn't really provide that. The governor did mention cutting the red tape, but this application of the concept was a little bit narrow, applying only to certain kinds of housing projects. Johnny, we have to go deeper than that, such as changing our zoning laws. That's something that Grassroots has been talking about for a long time. These laws need to be changed to allow for more multifamily homes. Mm-hmm. We also should reform the State Land Use Commission, which slows down new home building. These are longer-term solutions that are necessary to put in force to solve the problem.
Johnny Merrill talking with Kaylee Akina from Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. And the governor also announced a lot of new funding for healthcare. He plans to create some new training positions at the university and fund student loan repayment for behavioral health providers. Now, what's your take on these actions, Kaylee?
Well, I'm glad to see the governor putting in a concerted effort to attract new healthcare workers. We absolutely need more. And as people know, our governor is a doctor himself. But he should also focus on loosening regulations and making Hawaii a more attractive state for doctors. And what that would look like, and what I would have liked to have heard from the governor, would be, for example, to exempt medical services from the state general excise tax, as we mentioned earlier, or reform the state's medical licensing laws, such as by joining interstate licensing compacts. And that would make it a lot easier for certified doctors and nurses and other personnel to come to Hawaii without having to get another Hawaii license. Or lower the income taxes across the board. That would help doctors to find Hawaii more affordable. Or make it easier to build housing overall, which doctors need as well. The lack of it has made it difficult to encourage medical personnel to come to Hawaii because quite frequently they can't find suitable housing.
And we have the other big project, of course, the rail is there, but Aloha Stadium, the entertainment district, some lawmakers want to see it have affordable housing nearby, and some think it might just turn into another quote-unquote boondoggle. What are your thoughts about this massive project, the Aloha Stadium Entertainment District?
Well, ideally, the state should not be in the stadium building business. But if our legislators are determined to do it, their goal overall should be to minimize the burden on the Hawaii taxpayers. But based on the record of past government projects in Hawaii, there's a good chance it's going to be delayed and come in way over budget like the Honolulu Rail. Details have yet to come out on who will construct the new stadium and how much it will cost, but we have to look for that. The legislature budgeted $420 million, but likely that's not going to be enough. A better option might be to sell the land and rezone it for housing, which could be built by private home builders. So this is not going to be an easy issue to navigate in the governor's administration.
The governor also concluded his speech with the discussion about government accountability and a culture of public service. With the Red Hills spill and the rampant corruption, what can lawmakers actually do to make Hawaii state government more transparent?
Well, one thing they could do is to take a hard look at the report which just came out by the Commission to Improve Standards of Conduct. It recommended a laundry list of reforms to curb corruption, including stricter penalties for corruption and more restrictions on fundraising events, among other things. Governors should also support the recommendations in a letter that the Civil Beat Law Center, along with numerous organizations, including Grassroots Institute, sent to Governor Green. And it was signed by more than 24 media and government watchdog groups. Here are some of the recommendations that we sent him. 1, state agencies should err on the side of transparency, not secrecy. 2, public records should be cost-free for media and watchdog groups. Sometimes these cost thousands of dollars in order to obtain. 3, the State Office of Information Practices should make it easier to obtain government records. Now, Governor Green, in his State of the State address, actually mentioned this letter, and he agreed that public records need to be virtually cost-free. That would be a good first step.
All right, so as far as the State of the State address, we pretty much addressed everything. Kaylee Akina from Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. Anything else to add as we say aloha this Sunday morning?
Well, this is the beginning of a new administration's term, and I would encourage everybody to rally around the governor, expect the best, work with him, and see what he comes up with as he goes forward. He's got a challenge before him as he works with the legislature, and while we don't necessarily agree with all of the policies he's suggested and put forth in his opening speech, we can see that there are positive things that all of us can work together on to build a better Hawaii. But I'll be back, Johnny, with your invitation to the program again in the future and keep all of the listeners as informed as we can. Looking forward to that. How can they find your work at Grassroots Institute? We invite everyone to come to our website, grassrootsinstitute.org. That's grassrootsinstitute.org. And you'll find a wealth of information there. You can sign up for our weekly newsletters and reports. Johnny, thank you for letting me be here today on behalf of Grassroots Institute. No problem. Thanks for joining us this Sunday, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, Keli'i. Aloha.